Emily learned she had officially become the least important person in her own family the moment her parents put her boyfriend on a presentation slide. Not a photo of him with her. Not a family picture. Just him. Centered between quarterly revenue projections and investor growth forecasts. The room was silent for several seconds as alien investors studied the image. One of them raised 3 glowing tentacles and asked, "Is this the human companion included in the package?" Included in the package. Jake nearly choked on his coffee. Emily stared at the screen in disbelief. Her father nodded proudly. "Yes. Very reliable model. Friendly. Trustworthy. Excellent public relations value. I'm sitting right here," Jake said. "See?" her mother replied. "Natural charisma." The investors eagerly wrote notes. Emily wished the floor would open and launch her into deep space. Jake wasn't a billionaire. He wasn't a celebrity. He wasn't even employed. He spent most days building strange inventions in the garage behind his tiny apartment. Half of them exploded. The other half usually caught fire before exploding. Emily loved him anyway. Actually, she loved him because of that. He was funny, kind, and somehow managed to remain optimistic despite having exactly 17 credits in his bank account. Unfortunately, Emily's wealthy parents viewed life differently. To them, everything was an asset. Everything had value. Everything could be leveraged. Including boyfriends. Across the table sat Olivia, Emily's younger sister. She was ambitious, beautiful, and obsessed with success. Her startup had been struggling for months, and investors remained unconvinced she could lead a major company. Then they discovered she spent time around a human. Humanity had become famous across the galaxy. Humans were stubborn, loyal, and ridiculously persistent. Alien cultures found them fascinating. A startup founder with a human companion appeared trustworthy. A startup founder dating a human appeared even better. Emily didn't realize where the conversation was heading until her mother smiled. Jake could attend investor functions with Olivia. Jake blinked. Emily blinked. Even the investors looked surprised. Attend? Jake asked. Temporarily, her father said. Purely professional. Olivia smiled a little too quickly. It would help the company. Emily laughed. Nobody else did. The laughter died immediately. Oh, you're serious. Her father folded his hands. This is a business opportunity. He's my boyfriend. He's also human. That doesn't make sense. It makes perfect sense financially. Jake looked horrified. Guys, I don't think. Think of the exposure. Olivia interrupted. I'm not an advertisement. Exactly, Olivia said. You're better. Investors actually like you. Over the next few weeks, things somehow became worse. Jake attended one investor dinner. Then another. Then a technology conference. Then a startup gala. Everywhere he went, investors loved him. They laughed at his jokes. They took photos with him. They interviewed him. One magazine accidentally published an article titled, The Human Behind Olivia's Success. Emily nearly threw the magazine out an airlock. Jake constantly apologized. This isn't what I wanted. I know. I keep trying to explain. I know. Your parents won't listen. That part one definitely no. The pressure continued building. Investors began requesting Olivia and Jake together. Public appearances multiplied. Rumors spread. Soon half the business world believed they were dating. Emily watched her own relationships slowly disappear beneath headlines and publicity campaigns. The final blow arrived during a televised investor event. The host introduced Olivia. Then he introduced Jake. The audience cheered. Then a giant screen displayed a promotional image showing Olivia holding Jake's arm. The caption read, The Galaxy's Most Promising Power Couple. Emily felt her stomach drop. Jake looked shocked. Olivia smiled for the cameras. That night, Emily confronted everyone. Her parents defended the arrangement. Olivia claimed it was necessary. Jake tried desperately to explain. But after months of humiliation, Emily had reached her limit. "Do you love her?" she finally asked. Jake froze. The hesitation lasted only a second. But it felt like forever. Because Jake was trying to find the right words. Emily never gave him the chance. She walked away. The breakup was quick. Painful. Final. At least that's what everyone believed. Within a year, Olivia's company became famous. Investor money poured in. Her parents celebrated their brilliant strategy. The family appeared on business magazines across multiple star systems. And Emily disappeared. No interviews. No social media. No public appearances. Nothing. Most people assumed she had failed. Most people assumed she had given up. Nobody knew she was working 18-hour days. Nobody knew she was studying law. Nobody knew she was turning heartbreak into determination. And nobody, not her parents, not Olivia, not even Jake, had the slightest idea that one day she would walk back into their lives and completely change the game. 5 years later, the business world learned an important lesson. Putting a human next to a company could attract investors. It could not magically make the company competent. Olivia discovered that fact the hard way. For a while, everything looked perfect. Her startup expanded across multiple systems. She appeared on magazine covers. She attended glamorous galactic conferences. Every interview featured expensive outfits, dramatic speeches, and carefully rehearsed smiles. The problem was that eventually investors started asking difficult questions. Questions like how the technology actually worked. Questions like why deadlines kept being missed. Questions like why revenue projections looked as if they had been generated by a sleep-deprived monkey. Olivia always found someone else to blame. Until she couldn't. The company's stock value began falling. Major investors quietly left. Employees resigned. Within 18 months, the once promising startup collapsed in spectacular fashion. One financial analyst described the event as a controlled demolition disguised as a business strategy. The quote went viral. Meanwhile, Jake finally reached his limit. For years he had tolerated the publicity circus. He had attended events, smiled for cameras, endured endless questions about a relationship he never wanted. But once Olivia's company began sinking, he walked away. The breakup became entertainment news across half the galaxy. One reporter dramatically announced, "The most profitable relationship in corporate history has officially ended." Jake laughed when he saw the headline. Then he got back to work. Because unlike most people expected, he wasn't interested in fame. He was interested in building things. For years he had continued creating inventions in private. Most had failed. Some had exploded. One accidentally destroyed an entire laboratory bathroom. That particular incident remained his personal favorite. But humans possessed a reputation for a reason. When they failed, they tried again. Then again. Then again. Eventually one of Jake's projects succeeded. An advanced adaptive intelligence system capable of helping multiple species communicate and collaborate more efficiently. The technology spread rapidly. Companies loved it. Governments wanted it. Universities studied it. Within 3 years, Jake's small operation transformed into one of the largest technology companies in known space. Suddenly the unemployed inventor everyone once mocked became one of the youngest billionaire founders in galactic history. Interviewers constantly asked how he achieved such success. Jake always gave the same answer. Lots of mistakes. They usually expected something more inspirational. Meanwhile, far away from the headlines, Emily built a completely different future. After the breakup, she refused every offer of financial support from her family. She rented a tiny apartment, worked exhausting hours, studied law at night, graduated near the top of her class. Then she kept going. The heartbreak that once nearly destroyed her became fuel. Every insult, every humiliation, every memory of being treated as less important than a business deal. She converted all of it into determination. Years later, clients throughout the galaxy knew her reputation. She was intelligent, relentless, terrifying in court. Several corporate executives reportedly developed anxiety simply from receiving legal notices with her name attached. One nervous CEO even attempted settling a lawsuit before reading the actual complaint. Emily considered that one of her proudest achievements. Despite everything, however, there remained one subject she avoided. Jake. Occasionally his face appeared in news articles. Occasionally friends mentioned his company. Occasionally she caught herself wondering if he was happy. Then she forced herself to move on. At least she tried. The truth was less impressive. Neither of them had really moved on. Jake compared every relationship to Emily. Emily compared every relationship to Jake. Nobody ever measured up. Years passed that way. Two successful people pretending old feelings no longer existed. Then fate decided it was tired of waiting. One morning Emily arrived at her law firm's headquarters expecting a normal day. Instead, the senior partners called an emergency meeting. A major corporate lawsuit had arrived. Massive financial stakes. High-profile media attention. Potentially billions in damages. Naturally, they wanted their best attorney handling the case. Emily accepted immediately. The company's name sounded vaguely familiar. She didn't think much about it. Until she entered the conference room. The door opened. Someone stood at the opposite end of the table. Older. More confident. More successful. But unmistakably the same person. Jake looked up from the documents. Emily stopped walking. For several seconds neither of them spoke. The room suddenly felt very small. The years between them vanished instantly. Every memory came rushing back. The good ones. The painful ones. The ones neither had ever forgotten. Jake stared in complete shock. Emily's heart nearly stopped. Of all the places in the galaxy. Of all the people she could have faced. It had to be him. And judging by the look on Jake's face, he had never expected to see her again either. The first meeting was supposed to be professional. It lasted exactly 12 seconds before it stopped being professional at all. Emily sat across from Jake in a corporate conference room that suddenly felt too bright, too quiet, and far too small for two people who had once known every detail of each other's lives. He cleared his throat first. "You're representing them?" Emily didn't answer immediately. Her mind was still catching up to the fact that the universe had decided to drag her past into the present and sit it directly in front of her. "Yes," she said finally. "And you're the defendant." Jake leaned back in his chair like the words physically pushed him. "Of course I am." A few lawyers around the table exchanged uncomfortable glances. None of them spoke. Something about the air in the room made everyone instinctively aware they were witnessing a collision they should not interrupt. The case itself was enormous. Corporate data misuse. Interstellar licensing disputes. Multi-species contract violations. It should have been complicated. Instead, it became personal within minutes. Jake tried to stay formal at first, explaining timelines, offering documents, keeping his voice controlled. But every sentence seemed to carry something heavier underneath it. Regret. History. Things neither of them had ever fully said out loud. At one point, Emily interrupted him. "You built all of this after everything?" There was a pause. Jake nodded slowly. "Yeah. That's impressive," she said, then immediately hated herself for sounding like she cared. Jake almost smiled. "So are you. I've read your case history. You're terrifying now. I prefer efficient." Same difference. For a brief moment, something almost familiar flickered between them. Not warmth exactly. Not forgiveness. Something more complicated. Something unfinished. Then Emily saw a line in the contract documents. A signature. Her eyes narrowed. "This clause," she said slowly. "It references a third-party arrangement involving a human companionship agreement." The room went silent. Jake froze. That silence was different. He didn't look confused. He looked caught. Emily's voice dropped. "Explain that." He didn't respond right away. And that hesitation, small, sharp, unmistakable, hit her harder than anything else in the room. Finally, Jake exhaled. Your parents called it a strategic partnership. Emily blinked. What? They told me it was temporary. He continued. That I'd help Olivia with investor relations. That it was just appearances. Business optics. Emily's expression tightened. And you agreed? I thought it was harmless, Jake said quickly. I thought I was helping. I didn't know they were framing it like ownership transfer. The words landed like a slap she didn't see coming. Ownership transfer. Emily's hands slowly curled into fists. That's what they did, she said quietly. It wasn't a question. Jake nodded once. The air changed again, heavier this time. One of the junior lawyers nervously adjusted their tablet but didn't dare interrupt. Emily leaned back slightly, processing something she had spent years trying not to think about too deeply. The breakup. The betrayal. The way everything had been justified as for the family. Now it had a different shape. A worse one. Jake watched her carefully. I tried to contact you after I left. Multiple times. Your family blocked everything. Emily didn't respond immediately. Because she remembered. Not the messages. Not the calls. But the silence. The absence that had slowly rewritten her entire life. You never told me this, she said finally. I didn't get the chance to. A long pause followed. Then, from the far end of the table, Olivia's legal representative shifted uncomfortably and muttered, This is getting off topic. Emily's head turned slowly toward him. Is it? The man immediately looked down. Jake rubbed his face with one hand. I didn't want any of this to happen, Em. Hearing him say her nickname again felt like something unlocking inside her chest that she had spent years welding shut. But she didn't soften. Not yet. Then why didn't you stop it? Jake looked at her for a long moment. I thought I could fix it without breaking anything. A bitter laugh escaped her before she could stop it. That's what everyone always thinks. Silence returned. But this time it wasn't empty. It was full of everything they hadn't said for years. And somewhere beneath the tension, beneath the lawsuit, beneath the corporate chaos and alien observers watching the proceedings through live feeds across the galaxy, one uncomfortable truth became unavoidable. They were not finished with each other. Not even close. The reunion was never meant to be a reunion. It was supposed to be damage control. Olivia insisted on it. Their parents insisted even harder. And somehow, through layers of corporate pressure, emotional manipulation, and increasingly desperate legal maneuvering, an informal family resolution dinner was arranged at a luxury orbital resort where gravity could be adjusted depending on how dramatic the guests felt. Emily arrived first. She didn't come as a daughter. She came as counsel. That distinction mattered more than she wanted to admit. Jake arrived minutes later. He paused when he saw her already seated. Either of them smiled. Not because they couldn't. Because everyone in the room knew what had happened before. The table was long. Too long. Designed for diplomacy, not truth. Their parents sat at the head like they were hosting a business merger instead of confronting the emotional wreckage of their own decisions. Olivia looked confident at first. Too confident. The kind of confidence people wear when they haven't yet realized the floor beneath them is already collapsing. This is unnecessary, she said lightly. We can resolve everything professionally. Emily didn't respond. Jake didn't either. That alone made Olivia uncomfortable. Then the resort's central display activated automatically for family transparency documentation, a feature the company proudly advertised for high-trust negotiations. No one had bothered to disable it. A recording flickered onto the wall. Emily frowned. What is that? Their father waved dismissively. Old internal archive. Ignore it. But it was too late. The footage began playing. A younger version of their parents sat around a table, discussing Jake. Not as a person. As a resource. Emily is emotionally attached, one voice said. That's inefficient. Olivia's career trajectory requires public stability, Another replied. We assign the human to Olivia. Temporary arrangement. Maximum investor appeal. Then laughter. Casual. Businesslike. Clinical. Jake went still. Emily did not move. The room fell into absolute silence except for the recording continuing to play like a verdict that had been delayed for years but never forgotten. Olivia's face drained of color. That's not. Emily turned slowly toward her. You knew. Olivia hesitated. That hesitation was enough. Jake stood up. Not aggressively. Not dramatically. Just done. So it wasn't misunderstandings, he said quietly. It was a plan. No one answered him. The recording continued. More details. More decisions. More casual discussions about human asset optimization. Emily felt something inside her shift. Not rage exactly. Clarity. A cold, steady kind of clarity that replaced years of confusion. She finally understood what had happened. Not betrayal in a single moment, but construction. Carefully built. Systematically justified. And emotionally disguised as love. Jake looked at her then. Really looked. Not at the lawyer. Not at the opposing counsel. At the person he had once loved. I never stopped, he said softly. The words didn't need context. Emily's breath caught slightly, but she didn't look away. Neither did he. Around them, the family tried to speak at once. Excuses? Justifications? Damage control. But none of it mattered anymore. Because the truth had already been spoken louder than all of them. Emily slowly stood up. Not in anger. Not in victory. But in final acknowledgement. You didn't lose me because you left, she said quietly, her voice steady now. You lost me because I believed them instead of you. Silence again. He nodded once. I know. A long pause. Then something unexpected happened. Jake let out a short, exhausted laugh. This is probably the worst family dinner in galactic history. Despite everything, Emily almost smiled. Almost. Then Olivia attempted one last desperate move. I can fix this, she said quickly. We can rebrand it. We can. No, Emily interrupted. Just that. No explanation. No anger. Just certainty. The room froze. Emily turned toward Jake one last time. This case is over, she said. He raised an eyebrow slightly. Legally or emotionally? A beat. Both, she said. Then she walked out. Jake watched her leave. And for the first time in years, either of them tried to pretend the ending wasn't actually a beginning.